Hello, we're back to Milo and Teal's adventures. Now remember, this is book 1, Birds of a Feather, and this is our third session. I'm not going to say the third chapter because we're on chapter 2. Do you remember? There was that message about the bird. Milo and Teal were playing a game with each other and they wanted to see what each other was thinking. Who would guess it first would get a butterfly, would get to watch the butterfly opening. And it turned out that those birds started throwing things like insects and things they were supposed to eat, started throwing them down on Milo and Teal in the treehouse to get their attention. They were kind of a nest in the wrong place, I think. And we're going to find out a little bit more about that. But here's, can you see Teal there? You see, there she is on one of the edges of her treehouse. You know how they love to live in their tree houses. We've talked about that, haven't we? Well, she's just making a little nest for the baby bird that she found. So they put the idea in the library. Do you remember? Let's see if I can find the library picture. Here, this one. Do you remember? Those incredible Zog libraries. These are all the little people. And this is where they store thousands and thousands of crystal discs with stories on. And as soon as there's a story that might interest someone in the land of Zog, it pings out to their little pod, kind of like a computer, I suppose. And people get involved in projects. So let's see what happens. So they sent out the message about these birds and what they could do about them. And I think Teal was going to talk to her cousin Emmeline. So let's see. Launching the bombing bird story in the library was how Milo and Teal chose to stir the imaginations of Zogians to their assistance. Animals and people there live in close harmony with each other, getting on very well. Because the Zogian people have mastered the art of listening to animals. They were genuinely interested in what they had to say about the world. So a bombing bird certainly had much to say, and Milo and Teal very much wanted to find out what this was, as well as communicate and discuss their own plans. So back home, they found their mother in her workshop, making rugs. While their mother continued her special rug weaving, the children poured out their urgent request. Having stirred Sonia's excitement about the prospect of speaking to the mother bird of the tiny baby Teal was cradling in her hand, she understood that something had to be done quickly. Bird babies, no matter how brave and bold, need to be fed by their mothers frequently, especially if they can't yet fly. And this one couldn't. Holding out her husband, Freydal's hand, Sonia asked Teal to lay the fledgling in a nest of the softest offcuts from the rug weaving in order to keep it warm. Milo and Teal's mother was generally ready to pause her beautiful work in case of her children's emergencies of excitement. And this was one of them. So, laying her shuttle on the weft of the current piece at her loom, she finished off a series of knots which held the fabric memories of the last year into a beautiful piece. I think I should just stop here for a moment. Let's see. There is a picture of her weaving. It might be far back. It's a sort of, on Zog they do things so differently, and it's worth kind of investigating what they do. Sonia, Milo and Teal's mother, was a very famous rug weaver. Oh, look, quick sneak flash. This is one of the rugs she wove, but it's got crystals on it. It's another story. Milo's sitting in the middle. I'll show you that when we get there. But here's a picture. It's actually in book 2. You have to wait all that time, but I'm going to quick preview. It's a little bit blurry on this camera. This is Sonia sitting here in, their curvy, lovely houses made of trees. You can see the tree trunks here. And this is her rug that she's making on a loom. A loom is where you weave different pieces of fabric, in this case for Sonia, but you weave in different fibres and you make an incredible, thick, lovely tapestry, in this case, rug. So back to the story, all right? You can see where she's had to break off. She was in the middle of a project. Milo and Teal have come in, talking with this little tiny baby bird in their hands. So, leaving her shuttle on the weft of the current piece at her loom, she finished off a series of knots which held the fabric memories of the last year into the beautiful piece, and got down to the business of helping Teal register the occurrence at the library. With some more local help, she felt the children could both reunite the baby bird with their mother safely and begin their work of learning to communicate with the birds for the sake of their own plans. Within seconds, they'd uploaded the sound of the bird's voice, which would help other experts identify the species, and laid out the wishes of the children and the beetle bombing episode. Pods were used to record images, and the frequency of an emotion, and the sounds. They were perfect for transmitting very complex, multi-dimensional information. Within seconds of Sonia pressing the button to upload, people started to announce their bird communication abilities and their wishes to come and help with the business of bird interpretation. That wouldn't happen on our world, would it? So hold on. When Emmeline's name popped up, Teal pressed it and invited her over to come and help them. Emmeline being her favourite cousin. She was a little older and more experienced with several things, and she was great fun to undertake adventures with. There was no need for Teal to inspire someone who had already expressed real interest in a baby bird, because 10 minutes later, while enjoying a little lunch in the kitchen, Teal and Milo began learning the art of feeding a baby bird. The little thing sat on the table with his makeshift scrap-lined nest, uttering a series of squawks and tweets as he was fed snippets with a small pair of tongs. Teal longed to understand him better, fretting that they hadn't given him what he truly wanted, a return to his mother's nest. Their fret was unnecessary, however, as they watched the fledgling gobble up the small chopping of worm they had extracted from beneath the garden water butt. He chirped long and loud. Yes. And then dozed into a sleepy torpor. Gently, they eased the disjointed feathers back into their rightful place. Remember, the wing was kind of broken or dislocated when it fell? And discussed how they could transport the baby bird back to the nest high up in the tree. In the watchful presence of his mother, Milo had climbed the tree, searching for the nest. Carefully stacked behind the top of the treehouse roof, she had laid her twigs to form a peculiarly neat hexagon, the kind of shape you see more in a honeycomb of beehives than in the curves and spikes of a bird's nest, because she was a honey bird, working with the bees to bring in just the right amounts of the flower seeds dusted with the pollen the bees so liked. And in return, this bird was given access to the waxy droppings of the hive, which she would suck off, feed her baby chicks, mixed with worms and insects, during their fledgling period. The bird would then fly far and wide looking for the seeds of the flowers so adored by the bees. The flower seeds they ate required chemical digestion of the birds before they would germinate. So before they would sprout into new little plants, they had to be eaten by the birds. And then they lasted just a short, luxuriant season. And then, with the bird's contribution, the bees' honey was softer and more runny. With the birds' help, they could build reserves of the deepest, richest nectars, which helped to feed and sustain the new queens for the hive's future generations. As everyone on Zog knew, the more bees, the merrier. So, waiting for Emmeline to arrive, Milo and Teal sat on the edge of their treehouse and pondered the best way to achieve the baby bird's recovery to the nest. "I think singing would be the best way," said Teal. "We could use our high voices and tell the bird what we want." She knew that even if she couldn't mentally understand their language, a connection could still be formed by getting in touch with her core, her inner, which linked to all the living beings of the world. She could do this through singing and allowing her mind to relax into a state of receptivity to the perfect words. These could then hold an emotional connection to the spirit or the energy of the bird. So here she is, Teal, holding still a special feeling, and that could help connect to the spirit essence of the bird she wanted to connect to. So this could reveal her intentions towards the bird. And those of you know Teal, and you are starting to, were of course always benevolent. "Oh, that's fine," replied Milo. "I can tune in with my imagination as you sing. Together we can seed ideas into the bird's mind and then watch and see which one she chooses." Well, this is what Teal sang. I'll have a go. I don't know the melody, but we'll see roughly. Something like this. "Birds, I admire you doing your work. living your life, raising your chicks. You live high in this tree, for Milo and me and you. We have a plan we want you to have more than a say in. Up where you are is the perfect place for us to plant our tree house, second story, a little place for our own private glory, a little corner of, I can see a branch divide, is a place where you and your children could hide, where you and the honeybees could entertain at ease. Is this possible? You could consider using this space at all. We can help you move, we can help you smooth the transition to this. We love you, will you move in the branches a level rest, wide enough to fit your nest. Below is a nook where the bees could stack their hexagons. Fill them with honey and nectar from your seed-gathering chest. With some help we could carry you up and help you nest in your new place. Can you agree? It would give you a new protected space. Hidden from fleas, hidden from wind, green leaves, sheltering bees, let us know with your message we're waiting. Patiently, please. So that's sort of a little bit maybe how it sounded. That's their tree house. I think that's the second story they wanted to build. So can you imagine? This is where they wanted the bees to go higher up so they wouldn't get in the way. They wanted the birds to nest higher up so they wouldn't get in the way of where they wanted to build this house. So they sang to them. Well, Milo sat at the base of the tree listening to Teal's song, with his back firmly resting against the tree trunk, legs stretched out. I don't think I can show you that, you know, when you stretch out your legs. Legs stretched out in front of him, and he was humming along, but painting pictures in his mind to accompany Teal. In his mind's eye, he saw the new nest, perfectly cradled within the high branches of the tree, and in the centre of the nest lay the 5 squawking birds. He could imagine the corner of the honeybee nest, glorious in its hexagons. Do you know what a hexagon is? You know, 6-sided. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That shape. Yeah. That's a hexagon. I might put a piece on the screen so you can see. But he was imagining these hexagons of the honey-glazed wax sheets. He imagined 2 of them, Teal and himself, swathed in net to keep the bees from landing on their skin. You know, like beekeepers wear. I think on Zog they had like a net to stop the bees landing. And they'd carry up the honey-filled abode and the bird's nest. A terracotta tray could probably help steady the beehive and give it a place on the branch once he'd anchored them. And in this new home, there would be, of course, multiple advantages. The birds and the bees would be closer, so that less pollen and honey might get lost between them. And then the new position they chose was more sheltered, so great for the birds. Less bees would die off in the cold and the windy spells. And as Milo was thinking this and imagining things, the mother bird swooped down to his side, registering his thoughts. She was picking them up. She simply pecked gently at Milo's shoelace. She flew up to the new spot that the children had been so careful envisioning. Teal looked downwards towards Milo and they nodded. The song had worked. Emmeline and Fremy now had arrived to assist them in this interesting transfer of nests, and having responded to the library broadcast, they were ready. Emily and Teal discussed the bird's obvious sign of approval. Fremy congratulated Milo and Teal on their discoveries in bird communication, and both of them sporting their own language abilities. The girls whistled what sounded like Morse code to the bird for a few minutes, so for example. The mother bird then flew away from her nest and up towards the new chosen position for her nest. For the two volunteers, the project was interesting in a multitude of ways. Not only would they be very carefully moving an active bird's nest containing 5 babies, they might help with a new higher treehouse and the platform. These could be built with some innovations in the way it was attached to the tree itself. Talking and listening to elements of nature was always a win-win on Zog. It was no wonder that Emmeline and Fremi, both teenagers, should really wish to donate their time and energy to such a project. The fact that Milo and Teal were considerably younger than them really had no bearing on the fun, and they knew they were going to have it. Each person there was acting only from their sense of highest excitement. There was not a single trace of what you or I have been trained to endure. Nope, no obligation. Just fun. So we'll see what happens in the next chapter. Okay. Remember, like and subscribe so you can see the next part of the story of Milo and Teal, Birds of a Feather, transmissions from the planet Zog. And I will see you soon. Bye-bye.